Now, survivors of alleged abuse in Myanmar have been speaking to DW about their horrifying treatment inside a secretive so-called scam factory. Held against their will in an operation involving crime syndicates, these victims of human trafficking are forced to execute cryptocurrency fraud. Our reporters joined a team trying to find and rescue them. The names of the interviewees in this exclusive report have been changed for their own protection.
In this compound on Myanmar's border with Thailand, thousands of people are working to trick people in China, the US and Europe out of their savings. But the people inside aren't doing so for personal profit. They've been trafficked from across the globe and are being forced to work in a scam factory in slave-like conditions.
If there is no client at noon, no lunch. If someone checks and you didn't reply to a client, they beat you or make you stand for hours.
Lucas is part of a group that managed to escape a scam factory known as KK Park. It's one of around 12 such compounds in this area of Myanmar's Karen state, and it's one of the most notorious.
Security was checking our computers, seeing if we are doing our job or playing.
We work 17 hours a day. No complaints, no holidays, no rest. And if we say we want to leave, they tell us they will sell us or kill us.
So they did what they were told: make contact with people on the internet, win their trust, and convince them to invest in fake cryptocurrency sites. Once the victims have sent enough money, the website is shut down and their money gone. This sophisticated form of scamming is called pig butchering. And the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime estimates such scams generate more revenue than the drug trade in Southeast Asia. KK Park alone makes tens of millions of euros a month, apparently enabled by soldiers of Myanmar's border guard and on the backs of helpless victims of human trafficking.
Okay, his last message says, "We are in a bunker after the river."
What?
I don't know what's down the end of that river.
On the Thai side of the border, a team of aid workers is on a mission to help them escape. Timing is critical.
Hello?
Victims are sometimes transferred in taxis to other compounds via Thailand because the roads there are faster and safer. That's when Judah and Michelle act.
We're looking for a taxi with a license plate 95, yellow and blue, coming up on that side of the road.
It's a dangerous mission. They don't know if armed traffickers are in the car.
They turn down a side street. Okay, pull over, pull over, pull over. Reverse into that spot.
This time they're lucky. There are no armed traffickers in sight, there's no opposition from the taxi driver, and Judah and Michelle manage to usher the group into their car.
My name's Judah.
Oh, nice to meet you.
The group are brought to a safe house for a much-needed rest. Their next step will be dealing with immigration authorities.
Not an easy experience. And I hope I can go back to my country and find a job that I was graduated for, to start a new life.
Aaron and Lucas were eventually recognized as victims of human trafficking and repatriated to their home country. But thousands of victims are still trapped at KK Park and other scam factories somewhere on the Myanmar-Thailand border.
We can talk now to Jason Tower. He is the country director for the Burma program at the US Institute of Peace. Welcome to DW. You've been aware of this problem, as I understand, for some time. The survivors featured in our report described torture and death threats by their captors. To what extent do these accounts match your own research?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen instances from across Myanmar of there being use of torture in these compounds. You also notably have a very recent case. This is from last October, where there was an attempt by a very large number of individuals, well over 100 individuals, tried to escape a compound up in the China-Myanmar border in the Kokong territory. And security forces actually opened fire, resulting in the deaths of multiple individuals who were trying to leave that compound. So, you're seeing torture, murder, as well as very serious psychological threats that are being used in order to get people to scam, but then also to prevent people from leaving.
Indeed, very shocking. An article you co-authored in 2022 describes, I guess, a post-COVID explosion of human trafficking for labour in parts of Myanmar. Could you explain the link to COVID for us?
Sure. So actually, a lot of the areas in which these pig butchering scams are taking place, they were initially built out for illicit offshore gambling operations that targeted largely Chinese nationals. Massive amounts of capital were poured into Myanmar and the Thai-Myanmar border area, the China-Myanmar border, and other places across the region to build out these casino cities. Now, during the pandemic, what happened was the casino cities lost access to labor, and also the entire business model for the online gambling industry was pretty seriously disrupted by some of China's growing policies to regulate this. And so what you saw happen was these criminal networks shifted to kidnapping, shifted to human trafficking to start bringing labor in. And they also shifted away from operating the online casinos to perpetrating these pig butchering schemes. So you saw after 2020 that there was a very significant uptick in fraud, hitting initially Chinese nationals, but then increasingly going global as the scam syndicates started to traffic nationals from other countries, as it was difficult during pandemic times to be able to bring in adequate labor from China. And then they also started to roll out these scams targeting people in many different countries around the world. So we're seeing increasingly the patterns are that the scam syndicates are going after people in the United States, people in Europe, and really the rest of the world to a greater and greater extent.
Jason, we've got about 30 seconds left. Our investigative team basically says that the problem in Myanmar is that the fact that armed groups control border areas, they can act with impunity. Considering the political climate in Myanmar, is there a way to change this?
Yeah, I think the Myanmar military itself has been the biggest enabler of a lot of this activity. It has, under its border guard forces, been providing protection to the scam syndicates. Recently, you did see in the China-Myanmar border area an effort by some of the resistance groups to actually eradicate some of these scam syndicates, as well as to eradicate the presence of the Myanmar military that was on, again, the China-Myanmar border area. It does seem to have disrupted this industry to some extent on the China-Myanmar border. And so, I think one of the key things to look at is, are there ways to similarly begin cracking down harder on some of these scam syndicates on the Thai border and really in other parts of the region. What we've been missing so far is kind of a holistic crackdown that involves careful coordination between a wide range of countries. And I think if you were able to get that and able to deal a little bit more with the Myanmar military's role in protecting these scam syndicates, you might be able to make more headway.
Thank you for your insights there, Jason. That was Jason Tower, the Country Director for the Burma Program at the US Institute of Peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's get more on this from Lewis Sanders, who worked on that investigation. He joins us from Bonn. Welcome, Lewis. So how did aid workers in your report first make contact with the trafficked people?
Well, they usually have a very narrow window from when these trafficked victims exit the compound and are usually told that they have fulfilled their contract, but actually they're usually being sold off to either other compounds within the vicinity or also those in northern Myanmar. And what they usually need to do is they have to cross into Thailand because the infrastructure is better for the cars, for the vehicles and whatnot. And so this is kind of the moment where the trafficked victims reach out to Judah and Michelle or other aid workers that are doing these kinds of operations and say, hey, look, we were just told that they're going to release us, that this is what's going to happen when we get into Thailand and whatnot. And oftentimes they also might even know that they're being sold off. And so this is the moment where actually the trafficked victims are making contact with Judah and Michelle and other aid workers like this, and they're the ones that kind of coordinate with them and share a lot of the kind of information that they can that's crucial for when they do make it onto the Thai border. For example, one of the things that when I was speaking to Judah about, he always mentions that, you know, I have to let them know, like, if you stop at a traffic light, you need to jump out if you can. And there's other, you know, other steps that they do take to make sure they are safe when they do these kinds of things, but it's usually actually the trafficked victims who are first reaching out to them.
And without spoiling it too much for people who want to watch the full documentary, give us an insight into who's actually running these factories.
Well, we were able to trace cryptocurrency transactions from some of these scammed victims, and we were able to see how the assets effectively flowed into wallets that were controlled by KK Park or scam operations out of KK Park, and we were able to trace that to effectively one man who saw tens of millions run through his cryptocurrency account, and we have seen him and others like him placed in a larger network, a larger criminal network that spans across Southeast Asia, but also the globe, and is linked to Chinese mafia. And we're talking about 14K triads, and effectively how this leads to one particular figure, Wan Kwok Koi, alias Broken Tooth. And he is kind of the, let's say, the figurehead of this wide network that is effectively not only launching these scamming operations, but also laundering the assets. And we're talking about tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, that we alone have been able to see.
And have you confronted the people running KK Park?
We have. And we had to do it the legal way. And so we ended up submitting our evidence to them, but they didn't respond.
OK, Lewis, thank you for that. Lewis Sanders from DW's Investigative unit.